Haribo, Namaste, Aloha, and welcome again to Krishna Katha, Krishna book reading. My name is Janapati Das. Thank you so much for tuning in and continuing to support this reading of the Krishna book. You can do this also by sharing the videos with your friends, and also if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. And make comments so we can increase the algorithm of the YouTube channel so more people can hear about Krishna. I'd like to offer respects to my spiritual teacher, Jagaguru Siddha Swarupananda Srila Prabhupada. And I'd like to offer respects to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are reading from the Krishna book, and we are going to chant some right now, Krishna's names, so please join along. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namane Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Haribol, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, hello, welcome again. We had been reading, Krishna, of course, now is in Mathura with Balaram and with his parents and Devaki and Vasudeva. And both Krishna and Balaram have gone through the sacred thread ceremony and had a lot of little adventures so far, including retrieving the children or the son of their teacher from Yamaraj's abode, and also they are going back and associating with some of their devotees, including Akura and Kubja. And so this is where we left off, is that Krishna had gone to see Kubja, who is if you remember, was the hunchback woman that had been carrying sandalwood paste for service to King Kamsa. But when she saw Krishna and Balaram, she thought, wow, they're so beautiful, and that's the only person. So she put it all over their body, and Krishna, thinking of some way to repay her, just grabbed her shoulders and gave her a quick thing, and by the touch of Krishna, her back became completely straight, and she became very beautiful physically. And she was like, oh, I need to pay you back now, and can you come see me? And Krishna and Balaram were like, well, we've got some things to do, and we'll see you later. And so then he went back eventually to go see her. And the point that Bhaktivedanta Swami was making was that Krishna doesn't have any tinge of material energy. All the material energies emanate from him, but he is not affected by it. So any kind of sex desire does not affect Krishna, like it affects the living entities. And so it is said that a person who desires Krishna, actually in this contact, will be free from all lusty desires. So, even though Kubja was, wanting to enjoy with Krishna in this way by just the association of Krishna, the touch of Krishna, and just being able to render service to Krishna, she became the most elevated devotee. She became a devotee. So as Krishna, Krishna wants to make devotees of the living entity, which is the natural relationship, that basically bringing people back to the service of Krishna. After a while, Krishna fulfilled his promise to visit Akura at his house. So now he's going to go see Akura. Now, if you remember, Akura, of course, was the uncle of Krishna, and had been deputed by King Kamsa to bring Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. And but he was also a very great devotee of Krishna, and he wanted more association of Krishna, and Krishna said, I will also come back and see you. So this is the case where he goes back and sees Akura. Akura was in a relationship with Krishna as his servitor, and Krishna wanted to get some service from him. He went there accompanied by both Lord Balaram and Uddhava. So people have relationships, these sort of rasas. You can read a lot about the different kinds of mellows or rasas that living entities have relationships with the Supreme Lord in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. It's also been translated into English called The Nectar of Devotion by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You can read about these different relationships. There's different relationships. There's Santa Rasa, which is the relationship, a neutral relationship. Then there's a relationship of servitor, like Lord Jesus Christ was the servant of God, of Krishna. He was in this relationship of servitorship. And then we have friendship, like the cowherd boys with Krishna. Excuse me. Then we have a parental relationship, in which the relationship of like Devaki Devaki and Vasudeva, or Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj. They act as the parents of Krishna. And then we have the highest relationship, which is the conjugal love, which the gopis, or the queens of Krishna, were in that relationship of lover. When Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava were approaching the house of Akura, Akura came forward, embraced Uddhava, and offered respectful obeisances, bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balaram. Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava offered him obeisances in turn, and were offered appropriate sitting places by Akura. When all were comfortably seated, Akura washed their feet and sprinkled the water on his head. Then he offered nice flowers and sandalwood pulp in regular worship. All three of them became very satisfied by the behavior of Akura. Akura then bowed down before Krishna, putting his head on the ground. Then, keeping Krishna's lotus feet on his lap, Akura began to gently massage them. When Akura was fully satisfied in the presence of Krishna and Balaram, his eyes became filled with tears of love for Krishna, and he began to offer his prayers as follows. My dear Lord Krishna, it is very kind of you to have killed Kamsa and his associates. You have delivered the whole family of the Yadu dynasty from the greatest calamity. Your saving of the great Yadu dynasty will always be remembered by them. My dear Lord Krishna and Balaram, you are the original personality from whom everything has emanated. You are the original cause of all causes. You have inconceivable energy, and you are all pervasive. But for yourself, there is no other cause and effect, gross or subtle. You are the supreme Brahman realized by the study of the Vedas. By your inconceivable energy, you are actually visible before us. You have created this cosmic manifestation by your own potencies, and you enter into it yourself. As the five material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are distributed in everything manifested by different kinds of bodies, so you alone enter into different varieties of bodies created by your own energy. You enter the body as the individual soul as well, as independently as the supersoul. The material body is created by your inferior energy. The living entities, the individual souls, are part and parcel of you, and the supersoul is your localized representation. This material body, the living entity, and the supersoul constitute an individual living being, but originally they are all different energies of the one Supreme Lord. So these are all different kinds of energies: the material energy, the living entity, the expansions of Krishna, so many different kinds of energies. And just like we were saying before, Krishna is capable of entering into his own material energy without being affected by it, whereas the Jivatma is considered a marginal energy. In other words, it can be influenced by the material energy or the spiritual energy, Yoga Maya or Maya, Mahamaya, one way or the other. So Krishna is not affected, but we're so infinitesimal, spiritual, of the same quality as Krishna, spiritual energy, but we are infinitesimal and helpless in the sense that we can be influenced by the material energy or by the spiritual energy. So we have a minute amount of independence to make a decision about whether we want to serve Krishna or we don't want to serve Krishna. But we can't be like, well, I don't want to serve Krishna, but I also don't want to serve Maya. No, you're either going to serve Maya or you're going to serve Krishna. It's like Bob Dylan says, you've got to be serving somebody, maybe the devil and maybe God. You've got to serve somebody, or you've got to be served. This is how it is. We have a tendency to be of service, and that natural tendency is to be in loving service to Krishna. That is a natural, eternal function of the soul, of the Jivatma. But because of our false identification, of our desire, of our enviousness of Krishna, of our own desire to be the Lord and Master, we will come into the material world looking for the to be served, but actually in turn having to serve. So, similarly, everybody is serving somebody. That even if you have a job, you think, oh, that's my ideal job. Well, you have to serve somebody. You have to serve your boss to, even if you are the CEO, you have to serve your shareholders. Or, if you're a father, you have some kind of power over your children, but you do have to serve your children, and then you have to serve your wife, and the wife has to serve the husband, and the children have to serve the parents, or they have to serve the teachers, but the teachers also have to serve the state. So it's always someone serving someone. And so there's a lot of work in service, because that is a natural tendency. The point is to engage our service or our tendencies in karmic yoga, in the service of Krishna, so we can, just like Krishna was telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, you're a warrior, be a warrior for me. Don't be attached to the results, but just do it as an offering to me. You want to go off and be a yogi, that's not going to work, So you can do your work in this world if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're, a fireman or a policeman, or you're even a stay-home mom or dad. There is service to be done, but you can dovetail that service to Krishna in some way. If you're a policeman, you can protect society for Krishna, and you take the money and you use the money in service of Krishna. So there's many, many ways to do that. So it's very simple. A person can be doing that service. One person could be doing exactly the same thing as another person. They might both be policemen, but one is a devotee of Krishna and one is not a devotee of Krishna. The second person does it. He uses the money. He uses whatever he's doing is in the service of himself. What he believes is the service of himself, or his so-called happiness in the material world. The first person may be the same person. He may be a policeman, but he's a devotee of Krishna. He understands that everything that he has comes from Krishna. So everything should be engaged in the service of Krishna, whatever he's doing, even if it's directly has nothing to do with Krishna. You might be busting somebody, for doing something that's dangerous to society, and he's doing that as a service to Krishna. So, Arjuna, really, from the surface, a battle of Kurukshetra was really, they seemed to be for a kingdom, right? But actually, it was all part of Krishna's plan to come and to ease the burden of Kshatriyas and demoniac kings in this world, to protect his devotees and to give people association to him. So that was all part of his plan. He wanted Yudhisthira to rule the world in a pious way, whereas Duryodhana, even though superficially in the Vedic culture doing things of the Vedic thing, was not a devotee of Krishna, so he was more of a demon. Therefore, Krishna didn't want demons to run the world. So it's so there's so many examples that can be used in this, and we'll just continue here. In the material world, you are creating, maintaining, and dissolving the whole manifestation by interaction of the three qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's a very deep subject, of course, right? So through these different material modes of energy, things are being created, they're being maintained, they're being destroyed. We can see that all around us. There's beginnings, there's middles, there's ends to things. There's birth, there's sustaining in life, and then there's death. These are represented by the mode of ignorance, of course, is represented as Lord Shiva destroying the universe at the end, destroying things. Passion is the Lord Brahma as the creator of things, and Lord Vishnu in the mode of goodness as maintainer of things. You are not implicated by the activity of those material qualities because your supreme knowledge is never overcome, as is the case with the individual living entity. As the Supreme Lord enters into this material creation, and thus the creation, maintenance, and destruction are going on in their due course, so the part and parcel of living entity, so the part and parcel living entity enters the material elements and has his material body created for them. So this again, we have no power over, really have no power over the kinds of bodies that we get, but we can, except for in the fact of how we utilize the body and the mind in this life will really determine whether we will have a body in our next life or whether we will go back to Krishna. So what we do karmically, there's a reaction, good or bad, to the things that we do. But in the service of Krishna, there is no karma created. The difference between the living entity and the Lord is that the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and has a tendency to be overcome by the interactions of material qualities. Krishna, the Para-Brahman, or the Supreme Brahman, being always situated in full knowledge, is never overcome by such activities. So this is the point we were bringing up in the beginning. Krishna is not affected by the things that living entities are affected, even though we are of the same spiritual energy. Therefore, Krishna's name is Achyuta, meaning he who never falls down. Krishna's knowledge of spiritual identity is never overcome by material action, whereas the identity of the minute part and parcel living entities is prone to be overcome by material action, which is a really important point, because in trying to understand Krishna, oftentimes atheists, or even people who are agnostic or maybe even religious, they get caught up in this idea that they can somehow or another conceive of what the absolute truth is with their own mind, which is not really possible at all, actually, because this living entity is so overwhelmed and under the control of the living, of all these different material energies, goodness, passion, and ignorance also, that they have no entry into that. The only entry into understanding Krishna is through the mercy of the spiritual master and through Krishna. By applying what the spiritual master is being taught through the parampara, through the disciplic lineage. If a living entity applies this in their life humbly, through the mercy of the spiritual master, they can come to understand Krishna. The individual living entities are eternally part and parcel of God. As minute sparks of the original fire Krishna, they have the tendency to become extinguished. Akura continued, the less intelligent class of men misunderstand your transcendental form to be also made of material energy. That concept is not at all applicable to you. Actually, you are all spiritual, and there is no difference between you and your body. Because of this, there is no question of your being conditioned or liberated. You are ever liberated in any condition of life. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, only the fools and rascals consider you to be an ordinary man. Which is another really interesting point, coming to this point of people trying to understand God, understand Krishna, in the sense that they are coming from their own limited and faulty mind of understanding things. They think, somehow or another God must be something like them. So they think, how can this be? There's this sort of sky God up in the sky somewhere, and it's kind of ridiculous if you think about it, because to be able to fully comprehend with your little pea brain, you can't even comprehend the mysteries of the universe, or anything within our solar system for that matter. How would you be able to really understand the nature of God? But you can understand. But where is that knowledge to be found? At the feet of Krishna, at the lowest point, not at the highest point, but at the lowest point, the lotus feet of your Guru Dev. That's where it is. More tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others, as Lord Chaitanya prays. This one should chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, humility, not feeling like you're greater or you have the capability of knowing God. God, you can pull God down into your understanding, and if it's not there, or you can make these kind of blanket statements like, oh, God doesn't exist because I don't see him. It's like really kind of silly, if you think that maybe God just understands that you don't really want to see him, so he hides himself from you. Fools and rascals. That's just how these people are. To consider your lordship to be one of us, conditioned by the material nature, is a mistake due to our imperfect knowledge, or as Bhaktivedanta Swami would call it, poor fund of knowledge. Poor fund of knowledge. So it's not even like you can have a very materially intelligent person. There are a lot of them out there, and you listen to them, and if you've heard from a pure devotee or a spiritual master, you listen to them and you realize how ignorant they really are about the situation. But they feel like, but what they're saying materially is very, heady and very, I guess supposedly intelligent. But it is a poor fund of knowledge. They don't really have that entry. They're like blocked off because of their enviousness of Krishna. When people deviate from the original knowledge of the Vedas, and this is the point we're saying, the Vedas are self-evident. You can't, they are absolute truth, they are in complete truth. When people say, how, prove these things to me. The true proof is in the pudding right there. It's in the Vedas right there. And they think that, somehow or another we're going to take the system of empirical knowledge, which is completely faulty, since the mind is faulty and speculative and is not a perfect system, and try to apply that on a perfect system like the Vedas or the Vedic knowledge or the knowledge of the Parampara, of the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge of Krishna. You're going to apply this faulty system onto something that's perfect and say, how use that to try to prove something that's perfect. It's just, it won't work. It doesn't work that way. Your lordship has appeared on this earth in your original form in order to reestablish the real knowledge that the living entities are neither one nor equal to the Supreme God. My dear Lord, you are always situated in uncontaminated goodness, Shuddha Sattva. Your appearance is necessary to reestablish actual Vedic knowledge, as opposed to the atheistic philosophy which tries to establish that God and the living entities are one and the same. So, achinta bheda bhedatattva, simultaneously one but different. We are of the same energy, but we are not of the same quantity. We are infinitesimal spark of Krishna, children of Krishna. But Krishna, we are not the same in the sense that we are Krishna. So there is that kind of philosophy, but Bhaktivedanta refers to it as atheistic, because in order to say that we are all one, we ultimately nullify the idea of a Supreme Lord, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore it is atheistic. It's actually worse than actual atheism in itself. The person saying there's no God, is worse than that to say that I am God, because that's actually, and I'll give credit to my atheist friends, because they don't go around saying I'm God, even though they really are acting like that, but they don't say that out. They don't say that it's all one and we're all God, It's like they'll actually just say that there is no God. And so they have a little bit of some kind of like moralistic attitude about humanism, I guess it's called humanitarianism. But a yogi who is saying that we are all one God, they're very dangerous, because we've seen this time and time again. Many gurus, so-called gurus, who basically teach this philosophy. They're teaching their disciples to be hedonists, and ultimately taking advantage of their disciples and their disciples' children and the wives of disciples, and the guru is sleeping around because he thinks he's God, and he's doing all these things that are not in, eating meat and accumulating large amounts of wealth because he's God, and so it's dangerous. It's a very dangerous situation, and you should be careful of those kind of people when you come across them. So it's it's not like we just say, oh, this person's teaching yoga philosophy, therefore he's okay. No, you should be very, very careful about the kind of if you have a spiritual teacher, what are they teaching? Are they teaching these kinds of things? Are they teaching what is in Scripture? Are they teaching in a disciplic lineage of the, from Krishna? Are they, teaching these things? If they're teaching that, you can be God or you are God, that is not supported in Scripture. Therefore, they're charlatans. But, a lot of times people, that's what they're looking for. They like to know that, they like to believe that they're God and they can just do whatever they want to do, So they're the fools, the blind being led by the blind. My dear Lord, your appearance is necessary to reestablish actual Vedic knowledge as opposed to the atheistic philosophy which tries to establish that God and the living entity are one and the same. My dear Lord Krishna, this time you have appeared in the home of Vasudeva's son, along with your planetary expansion, Sri Balaram. Your mission is to kill all the atheistic royal families along with their huge military strength. You have advented yourself to minimize the overburden of the world, and in order to fulfill this mission, you have glorified the dynasty of Yadu, appearing in the family as one of its members. My dear Lord, today my home has become purified by your presence. I have become the most fortunate person in the world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipable by all different kinds of demigods, pitras, living entities, kings and emperors, and who is the super soul of everything, has come into my home. The water of his lotus feet is purifying the three worlds, and now he has kindly come to my place. Who is there in the three worlds among factually learned men who will not take shelter of your lotus feet and surrender unto you? Who, knowing well that no one could be as affectionate as you are to your devotees, is so foolish that he will decline to become your devotee? There's a lot of people like that, actually, unfortunately. Throughout the Vedic literature, it is declared that you are the dearmost friend of every living entity. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Shudram Sharvam Bhutanam. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completely capable of fulfilling the desires of your devotees. You are the real friend of everyone. In spite of giving yourself to the devotees, you are never depleted of your original potency. Your potency neither decreases nor increases in volume. So, Krishna is complete, and that is stated also in the invocation of the Sri Shapanishad, where it said that, the Krishna, the supreme truth, absolute truth, is complete, and all the parts of which emanate from this complete whole is also complete. And there is no, it's not like 1 minus 1 is 0. It's 1 minus 1 is 1, and 1 plus 1 is 1. There can be no decrease, there can be no increase. Krishna is complete in himself. My dear Lord, it is very difficult for even the great mystic yogis and demigods to ascertain your movement. You cannot be approached by them, and yet out of your causeless mercy you have kindly consented to come to my home. This is the most auspicious moment in the journey of my material existence. By your grace only, I can understand that my home, my wife, my children, and my worldly possessions are not all different bonds to material existence. Please cut the knot and save me from this entanglement of false society, friendship, and love. Lord Sri Krishna was pleased by Akura's offering of prayers. His smile was captivating Akura more and more. The Lord replied to him as follows: My dear Akura, in spite of your submissiveness, I consider you to be my superior, on the level with my father and teacher and most well-wishing friend. You are therefore worshipable by me, and since you are my uncle, I am always to be protected by you. I desire to be maintained by you because I am one of your children, one of your own children. Apart from this filial relationship, you are always to be worshipped. Anyone who desires good fortune must offer his respectful obeisances unto personalities like you. So now, it's important to know that Krishna, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you'll find in the Krishna book time and time again that Krishna sort of takes this position of like humbly submitting himself, as an inferior to the devotees of Krishna. And even Lord Chaitanya did that over and over again, because he was setting up the way that you are supposed to relate to great personalities, actually how you should relate to everyone, to be very humble, but especially to great devotees. that you always, be the servant of the servant of the servant 100 times, as Lord Chaitanya would say, be the servant of the servant of the servant. So it's not just enough to be like, okay, I want to have a relationship with God, but also just that you need to learn to approach the devotees of Krishna in this state who are serving Krishna and be able to offer service to them as well. And this is very pleasing to Krishna. You are more than the demigods. People go to worship the demigods when they are in need of some sense gratification. The demigods offer benediction to their devotees after being worshipped by them. But a devotee like Akura is always ready to offer the greatest benediction to the people. A saintly person or devotee is free to offer benediction to everyone, whereas the demigods can offer benediction only after being worshipped. One can take advantage of the place of pilgrimage only after going there. By worshipping the particular demigod, it takes a long time for fulfillment of the desire, but saintly persons like you, my dear Akura, can immediately fulfill all the desires of the devotees. My dear Akura, you are always our friend and well-wisher. You are always ready to act for our welfare. Kindly, therefore, go to Hastinapura and see what arrangement has been made for the Pandavas. Krishna was very anxious to know about the sons of Pandu, because at a very young age, they had lost their father. Being very friendly to his devotees, Krishna was anxious to know about them, and therefore he deputed Akura to go to Hastinapur and get information of the real situation. Krishna continued to say, I have heard that after the death of King Pandu, his young sons Yudhisthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev, along with their widowed mother, have come under the charge of Dhritarashtra, who is to look after them as their guardian. But I have also heard that Dhritarashtra is not only blind from birth, but also blind in his affection for his cruel son. So this is a story, of course, from the Mahabharata. And, Dhritarashtra was the blind king who was not only blind physically, but also blind spiritually, because he was could not see the devotion of his nephews and of his brother Pandu, but was partial to the evil tendencies of Duryodhana and his brothers. And that's a story in the Mahabharata, of course. If you have a copy of that, I would recommend reading that. It's very wonderful. The 5 Pandavas are the sons of King Pandu, but Dhritarashtra, due to his plans and designs, is not favorably disposed towards the Pandavas. Kindly go there and study how Dhritarashtra is dealing with the Pandavas. On receipt of your report, I shall consider how to favor the Pandavas. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, ordered Akura to go to Hastinapura, and then he returned home, accompanied by Balaram and Uddhava. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 47th chapter of Krishna. Krishna pleases his devotees. So we will get into that story about the Pandavas next time. Thank you very much. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Gurudev. Rama Okay, that's all for today. I'll see you next time. Namaste.